Evolution in violin making is nothing else than violin making technique. And is this technique an enemy for nowadays Cremonese violin making? Stay tuned and I will tell you everything about it. Hello, back again. I know you love the hand clap. Christian hates it. I love it. Come on. I'm here in Cremona, Italy, and I'm making violins the best way I can do, trying to be always open-minded for everything, even violin making techniques. And as long as somebody could show me that this, what he's doing, is better than what I'm doing, I'm super interested. Today we talk about a very interesting topic. Spicy. Most people, when they come to my violin workshop, they have to face exactly this topic, the violin making techniques, because I offer instruments which are, and I tell them the negative point, that it's machinery made, finished in my workshop, varnished, set up, and then this is the most economic instrument, the Scala Perfetta. Then we have instruments which are made here with all the makers together by hand, linea Macchi, and then if every single maker in my workshop makes an instrument, it becomes a master instrument because there's one person behind each instrument. If you come in this workshop here, I will show you a section of Scala Perfetta, some linea Macchi, and then instruments made by other makers, and then plus Marco, Min and me. And it's nothing else about the violin making techniques and its evolution. Years ago, we're talking about the 15th, 16th and 17th century, when all these great Italian makers popped out. And the violin has been just born and was completely new. They only made it by hand. And the more the demand raised, they had to face to make instruments cheaper, even in these years, okay? So they started to use machinery. Probably they had some band saws with some leather belts and the mill was going. I'm living in Via Mulino, so that means there was a mill, and probably there was a mill for grinding wheat, but it could also be that there was a carpenter behind who also attached his machinery on this mill, which was turning outside of the house, this big wheel, because of the water which was passing by. Starting like this, nowadays, this mill, we all have it by plugging into the wall, and we have electricity. And it gave us the opportunity to have different tools, but it doesn't really make too much difference to these years when they started with these mills and with these leather belts and yeah? So if at Stradivarius time ages, the wood came above the river to the channels and the harbor of Cremona, and that's why Cremona in those years became so famous, even in years before, even more important than Milan because of the Po River. By having other tools and machinery, other towns became more important and Cremona stayed the way it was. This has a crucial impact on the making and the result what you're making. Now, when we're planing now a raw tree with a plane which is already heavy like this, by just taking it by hand and then planing it by hand, it's obvious for all of us that this joint which we are making from a raw tree to a jointed top of the violin, let's say, doesn't really have an impact on the quality of the violin. Now you're all there, oh Edgar, what are you saying? No, even nowadays that we have electric planes, and I do have it as well, and I have a super great one with the knife, small tiny diamonds, so it doesn't strap the flamed maple, for instance. Still, even by having these high sophisticated, super high speed electric plane, even me, myself, I'm still using the plane like this to make a joint, because there is no other way which makes the joint better and long lasting than making it by hand with a well sharpened hand, sharpened on Japanese sharpening stones, sharpened like a razor, a hand plane like this. Mine here is from Stanley. I do have also these ones from America, Lee Nielsen. We love these ones, and we are able to pay hundreds of euros for a small plane. But these planes you can't beat them with any machinery. And I know that all the experts, when they're talking about machinery, impossible. let it be. Planing by hand with a plane like this is super precise and is better than every machinery. It's like the best electric shaver from Philips or from I don't know who invented it. Isn't razor, is not that good like this old style knife where I'm always very afraid, but it's the best way to sharpen and cut your beard, okay? And a little bit like this also in violin making. And if you want to do certain things in a certain level, planing a bridge, bringing it to a specific measurement or whatever, it's the best way is calm down. After you roughed it out with an electric plane, let's say, the last millimeters you do by hand, and then you joined it with hot animal glue, and it will last for hundreds of years. Yeah. And if it's made with machinery and you have to use then different kind of glue, this is not the way how you will achieve better quality and better sounding instruments. So the technique has definitely an impact on nowadays violin making and even on my master-made instruments, because just imagine making the arching of the cello and you see this nice picture of me, of people working with me and colleagues in Cremona, roughing by hand the arching. Yes, by doing that, we understand the wood we're working with, and in proportion to the input of information we get by doing it by hand, we decide what kind of arching, what kind of thickness, and how we're going to make the entire piece in order that it will later on sound perfect and will match and maybe even be better than the expectations of our customers for those instruments. And by looking at it and seeing how many hours it takes, and then seeing a violin much less, we would say, so if this has to be made by hand, how some violin makers say, then the cello must sound much better than the violins because the cello is bigger. So you see already there is something not correct. So yes, you can use machinery, and we use it. We have like electric planes, even smaller ones, and we rough out a little bit. But you always have to calm down and go back to this kind of way of working. And you should always be aware and very careful not to steal yourself those moments that you have a little bit this nice quality moment for yourself, you and the piece of wood, in order that you get the right information and to adapt what you're doing to make a great sounding instrument. Okay? So when we hear about another kind of small, tiny detail, it was already that I was in this workshop, so it was in the past 20 years that I heard about this information that Stradivari had 15 people working in his workshop. 15. We're here 6, with the cloning woman 7, okay? That means we are not even half of Antonio Stradivari's violin workshop, okay? And in these years, they made everything by hand, even from the rough tree planing. So do you think that all these 15 people were making precisely nice things? They were just looking at Stradivari and say, go, 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 Antonio, make, 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 and Antonio made everything by himself? Or do you rather think that some, maybe 10 of these 15 people were actually in charge of roughing, planing, preparing, jointing, doing rough works in order that Antonio then could have some quality time together with his piece-by-piece violin? It's a nice consideration, right? I believe this was the way it was. And in those years, there were a lot of people working in a violin making studio where they were just used, like we nowadays use electric plane, electric bandsaw to cut out the pieces. So very likely, in those years, the technique was not sophisticated enough that everybody who was in the trade could focus completely on making violins, what we nowadays intend of high quality violin making. Most of those people actually were just low quality and human resources who were just roughing and working, and a few of them turned out to be later on students of Antonio Stradivari or whatever else. So this evolution changed. Less people were working. Nowadays, this high-level violin making technique is evolving, and if years ago nobody dared to talk about that he has electric plane or electric bandsaw, nowadays there are some people doing a lot of kind of advertising and promoting themselves that they don't have a single machinery and everything is made by hand. And then it turns out later on that you know that they have huge machinery park and they're working like this and they make I don't know how many instruments. I don't want to make names, but I certainly know the people and I know how the instruments look like and what they're doing. Whatever actually counts at the very end is the final product. And if there is somebody fooling you, telling you nice stories, it's actually his story. As long as his instruments sound great, it's all fine to me. There are no shortcuts in order that you achieve a high quality instrument without doing your homework and without getting your experience. And after all, I don't believe that instruments which are made nowadays are less good compared to instruments of the past. Yeah, it's just that you cannot compare it, and there is so much emotion in it that when I give you here a Stradivari from 1715 in your hands, yeah, wow, this is it, you know, and then you're just, it's very difficult to be honest to what it is, look at it, check it out. Me too, I really love Strats and I really love high quality instruments. I love what I do and I love instruments of others, look at them and everything, but try to put emotions a little bit aside and just see the final quality. See how the maker is able to adjust the sound to your expectation and is handling the sound adjusting, is showing you that he's working, is showing you how he's doing it and all these things. Yeah. So this evolution in violin making is more like a felt for me when I see this title, more like an invisible enemy for a lot of makers, because they don't know how to handle this evolution in order that it is actually an advantage for them and they actually are quicker and better. Because if you're just quicker, then you are into mass production and raising the product, the quantity of production. We all know this is not about what we're talking here. This entire channel is actually existing because we are here slow motion violin making. And if you want to know a little bit more about violin making in CNC, there is lots of information. Watch the video with John Kirk, how he's approaching the whole thing. He dedicated actually his life on this entire subject. I think it's very important, very interesting also to listen to what he tells. And he, after many years working with CNC routers, why he came to Cremona, what he's learning here. It's interesting. Check that out. I think it gives you a little bit a better inside view about the whole violin making world nowadays and the temptations which most of the makers outside have, probably even here. I don't know. I'm not so too much in it. We are here in Cremona, actually a happy island where we all have, yeah, electric saw and plane is not an issue, you know. But we make instruments by hand and we do it in a certain way. And this is what it's all about. Thanks for watching and subscribe. Ciao, ciao.